Welcome, everybody, to the Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee meeting of January the 28th, 2025. Prior to commencing our meeting, I would like to read our Pembroke Land Acknowledgement Statement. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of the Council and the community and our committee and the community that the city of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. Now I'll call the meeting to order. And can we have approval of the agenda, please? Moved by Ian, seconded by Ms. Rentha. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting of November the 25th having been circulated, I'll call for their approval. Moved by Ed, seconded by Ms. Rentha. Any errors or omissions to the minutes as distributed? Seeing none, all in favor? Good. Carried. Thank you very much. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll proceed with new business. A, Z1 2025, 1 and 101 Howard Street, JP2G Consultants Incorporated, the official plan and planning report. Can we have the report? Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, Catherine Curry of JP2G Consultants, Inc., on behalf of the property owners, has submitted an official plan and zoning bylaw amendments application for two properties, which will be municipally known as 1 Howard Street and 101 Howard Street, respectively. So in terms of organizing the information in this report, I'm going to, just for an attempt at simplicity, I'll be speaking to 1 Howard Street and the zoning bylaw and official plan aspects of it first, and then moving to 101 Howard Street. So the intention for 1 Howard Street is for a future development of single detached dwellings that would be on separate lots fronting the Ottawa River. Now, this would be subject to future applications for consent to sever being approved. This property, or this portion of land, is currently zoned residential type 1, flood fringe, by the zoning bylaw. So the R1 portion of the zoning already permits a single detached dwelling, although that would be one per lot. And the flood fringe suffix requires that no lower level openings are permitted below 114.2 meters. So the proposed zoning is residential type 1, flood fringe, with a holding zone marker added. The holding zone marker is being added so that requirements will be triggered in the future for the submission of satisfactory archaeological investigation, an environmental impact study, a functional servicing report, and approval from the County of Renfrew for a private road to access the property crossing the Algonquin Trail. These would all be required, again, prior to the holding zone marker being lifted and the development being able to proceed. In terms of the official plan, this property is designated flood fringe residential and hazard by Schedule A of the official plan. So the applicant with this application has submitted a new topographical survey of the site, which identifies applicable elevations to reconfigure the delineation of these two designations on Schedule B of the official plan. Additionally, under this proposed zoning bylaw amendment, we would be looking at adding an exemption to section 7.15 of the official plan. This section states that consents should be granted only when the land fronts on an existing public road that is of a reasonable standard of construction, and that consents will not be granted that have the effect of creating landlocked parcels, either for the severed or retained lots, In the case of this property, a future private road is proposed to access the proposed severed lots. This private road itself would be, again, subject to the approval of the County of Renfrew for it to cross the Algonquin Trail, which would also be a condition for the removal of the holding zone. So this proposed exemption to the official plan would allow for the possibility of the proposed private road to give access to these proposed severed lots. And this would prevent these lots from being landlocked. So that is for 1 Howard Street. So moving on to 101 Howard Street, the southernmost property, 2 3-story apartment buildings are proposed. Now, for the chunk of land that this proposal applies to, there's actually a handful of properties that would be consolidated. And there is a mishmash of zoning, including highway commercial holding, and residential type 2 that applies to these properties individually. None of these zonings permit the proposed use of apartment dwelling. So the proposed zoning is for a standard residential type 4 R4 zoning to apply to the new amalgamated property. And this would allow for an apartment dwelling. All applicable R4 provisions for apartment dwellings are able to be met under the current proposal. That includes minimums for lot area, lot frontage, front yard setback, rear yard setback, exterior side yard setback, interior side yard setback, landscaped open space, minimum dwelling unit area, building height, and privacy yards. So as such, the proposed R4 zoning is directly in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Regarding parking, the zoning bylaw would require 1.5 parking spaces total per dwelling unit for apartment dwellings. And by their current proposal, the developer intends to fully accommodate all required parking between both underground parking under the proposed apartment dwellings, as well as surface parking. That said, again, this proposal can be viewed as very much being in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. In terms of the surrounding area, the proposed zoning is highly compatible. To the north of the property is the Algonquin Trail abutting the Ottawa River, providing for recreation and active transportation options to the residents of the proposed higher density development. From every other direction, the property abuts the rears of highway commercial zoned lots that front on Pembroke Street. These highway commercial properties generally have very long depths, which means they have significant rear yards with significant landscaped open space, sometimes parking areas, or just the rears of their buildings that would immediately abut the property in question. So as such, the development at 101 Howard Street can be viewed as having significant buffering from the busy front stretch of Pembroke Street East. As well, setbacks, privacy yards, and buffering requirements will apply to the proposed development at 101 Howard Street, providing for appropriate separations to the highway commercial properties. The properties that comprise or that will comprise 101 Howard Street, they're designated uniformly residential by Schedule A of the official plan. So there is no need for this property under this application. There's no change to the official plan proposed for 101 Howard Street. The existing designation, the definition says that the residential classification of land means the predominant use of said land in the areas so designated shall be for all types of residential dwellings. So this development proposal is very much in keeping with the existing definition that applies to 101 Howard Street. Also from the official plan, regarding the residential designation, it states that the City of Pembroke will encourage all forms of residential intensification to create a potential supply of new housing units. And this intensification will be encouraged in built-up areas of the city with sufficient existing or planned infrastructure. And as such, the proposed zoning is strongly in keeping with this direction of the official plan, it will allow for residential infill in an already built up area with sufficient planned infrastructure. The official plan also directs that all residential development shall be adequately serviced with municipal water and sewer services. Similarly, the provincial policy planning statement, 2024, directs the same. In the case of this proposed development, full water and sanitary sewer servicing are available to 101 Howard Street, and the requirement of both site plan approval and a building permit for this development will trigger the approval of the operations department to ensure adequate servicing capacity. The official plan explicitly requires site plan control to apply. So again, this development will be subject to site plan control. And lastly, regarding the provincial planning statement, it states that planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities by permitting and facilitating all types of residential intensification, including the development and introduction of new housing options within previously developed areas and redevelopment to have a net increase in residential units. And as this development proposal proposes residential development, introducing new housing options and a net increase in residential units, it is highly in keeping with the direction of the province. And as such, the planning department is recommending the approval of this application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 1 and 101 Howard Street. A single informational inquiry was received from a neighboring property owner. That gentleman is actually present this evening in case he wishes to field any questions.
Wait, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I don't really have any questions, just interested in hearing what the proposal was in detail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm quite excited that there's going to be more development. My only question is I have a couple of concerns in regards to having viewed the aerial photograph of the area. I notice it looks fairly wooded, fairly well wooded and treed. And with the provincial and federal mandates regarding global warming and the maintenance of, keeping some forested areas within areas that are having some growth to maintain that there is some greenery. I know that most developers, when they come in, they will clear cut because it's a lot easier to build a house. There's no trees in the way and then plant later. But I think some of the woodland there is quite mature. And, we're seeing around the world, especially in California, where perhaps lack of greenery may be affecting the climate. Is there any sensitivity within any of our bylaws to the greening and the maintenance of some greening and developed areas? We all know that when an area is paved, there's excessive amount of runoff water that will go to the pollution treatment plant, where we'll be treating clean water, whereas you have, you have natural foliage, et cetera, that it soaks up some of that water. And I hate to sound like a tree hugger, but as we look around, I think there has to be some sensitivity to that. My other question is, will these areas be supplied with water and sewer? And is there access for them for a hookup? And one third observation, the Ottawa River Garbon, which is it's a fault line. We live on a fault line on the Ottawa River. It's an earthquake zone. And there's speculation of building a 3-4 story building, perhaps. Will those buildings be built to suffice that the residents that are living there are protected? Considering, thank God we haven't had a large earthquake, but we've had shakes here on occasion. If something was to occur, would the building code cover those buildings? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Uh, So through you, Mr. Chair, I think Anthony's he'll let me start and then we'll move to him. So through you, in response, Councillor Jackno, personally, I hugely share your concerns regarding greenery and vegetation and climate change. The official plan does actually have directives that the city is to maximize tree cover and vegetation cover for reasons you described. The zoning bylaw does not have specific requirements for tree cover, but I think that's where Anthony will come in momentarily. He may be able to speak to, or Catherine may be able to speak to the developer's individual proposal with that. Regarding your question about servicing, yes, servicing is available to these properties. And regarding your note of concern for earthquakes, that would be addressed by the chief building official under the building code.
Thank you, Chair and members of council. Just to introduce myself, for those who don't know, I'm Catherine Curry. I'm a junior planner with JP2G Consultants. And to answer the question regarding the vegetation and climate change, we would work with staff during the site plan control process to address the vegetation on site. Thank you. And I believe Owen answered the other two questions. Thanks. Nope.
Oh. Or me. and to introduce myself, Anthony Homick, manager of planning JP2G. I just wanted to add to the question and comment about the earthquakes. Not only would the building code requirements be addressed through the building permit process with the chief building official, we would also be required to do geotechnical investigation, and so there'd kind of be doubly sure in terms of the safety of the site for future occupants of an apartment building.
Few questions. I'm glad Councillor Jackano brought up the tree coverage because, well, I'm not going to name names, but one of our neighbors has a lot of development and they just clear cut stuff. And I think people around this table probably know where on Petawawa Boulevard I'm thinking, and it looked like a desert for several years. So I think that's to be avoided. That was clearly unnecessary. I mean, they still don't have trees in that area other than some shrubs that they planted. So I'm glad the city of Pembroke is taking that a lot more seriously, and certainly I think that should be a priority. There's any number of examples where, you know, to build a house, they clear cut the entire lot, and then the house goes up in the middle, and you're thinking you didn't have to take trees out of the backyard and stuff like that. So I do hope that's a priority, but it also sounds, if I'm picking up what I heard, that it's kind of an internal priority for JP2G as well, is to monitor that. So that's a good partner to have. With respect to the building height, was there any consideration of going any higher or maximizing more units? And I say that because, well, this won't surprise a couple people here. I desperately believe we need a lot more apartment units in this area. Our current unit prices are exorbitant, almost stopping single individuals and young families from being able to afford an apartment, let alone a multi-unit apartment if there's children in that. So I'm just wondering, like, is this the height we want? Was there any consideration to go bigger? Because this seems to me to be, you know, while we might not want to put up a high rise in the middle of Catherine Street or something, this is a location that's probably not bothering anybody if we did want to put in a taller building. I have a number of, do we want to just do this one at a time? I have like 5 questions. Do we want to do this one at a time, Mr. Chair? Okay. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a great point. I'd say we haven't really got to that level of detail yet, but we do have both Alex Diaz and Ashraf Arif from Sinner Capital, the property owners, on the line. I'm not sure, Alex or Ash, if you guys wanted to chime in on that. They are on Zoom. But oh, here's Alex. There we go.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now.
Just regarding the question would be regarding the building heights.
Yes.
Yes, that's right, Alex. If you guys had given any consideration to going higher and building more units.
We did. There was, I guess, two considerations. One was just to keep things a bit more on the affordable side. We were looking at, the buildings are really, it's kind of midway between a 3 and a 4-story building, each of the buildings, just to keep it in with wood framing, a little bit more lower construction costs would, help with keeping the rents lower also. So that was one of the reasons we didn't go extremely high. Going higher would be obviously nice for views, but for cost reasons, that was it might be a little bit challenging. And then the second item, as far as more units, we did split it over the 2 buildings. If we were to go higher, we currently have, with the parking rate that's required, we have majority of the parking underground under each building, and we do have some surface parking. If we started adding additional parking, we may run out of area to basically accommodate all the parking needed. Like right now, I wouldn't say we're maxed out, but there isn't a huge surplus of land for additional parking. I don't know what percentage of the property has basically the creek that runs through it, but a good majority of the property is not buildable, for lack of a better term. So that's why the buildings are positioned where they are. On a side note, when it comes to the question about the trees and everything else, one thing to keep in mind is, we're not building. It's not a project that's taking up the entire property. A smaller percentage of the property is being built on.
Okay, thank you for that. So obviously I'm clearly giving the hint that I'm pro in favor of this and pro more apartment units. In terms of the private road, do we know where we're at with the county? Have we approached the county yet? I have multiple people putting up their hands.
I did have a meeting with the county, Owen and I did, and we wanted to get their perspective on this, whether it was premature to submit the rezoning application for those lands north of the trail. And they felt, no, they could form part of the application. There would be significant requirements for them to meet so that the county could allow them a crossing, but it didn't sound like it was insurmountable. So as part of the holding symbol, that would be part of the requirements for the development, would be that there has to be that crossing allowed. And if that's done, the archaeological plus the geotechnical, then we could remove the holding symbol.
Did they say I mean, obviously this trail runs through any number of roads multiple times through the county. Why would we describe it as significant things to do?
Well, there would be an agreement, number one. There would also be a financial component to it as well, because as with the railway, any crossing, there would have to be a payment to the railway. And I think the county is continuing along that line with the payment as well. So there has to be a formal request. It has to go to a certain committee. I can't remember exactly the committee. And then from there, it goes to another committee, and then I believe county council. So there's several steps before it's approved.
We couldn't just expropriate it? I wasn't joking with that question.
Oh, okay.
Like, I know the number of hoops that the city of Pembroke is juggling because their trail runs through the city and the garbage and the other things that we're putting up with. So I guess I'm just taken a little back when it was described as significant things to go through to get what to me should be a pretty easy and neighborly approval.
Yes.
I'll
speak to that.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As Colleen said, it's certainly a number of hoops to jump through, but I think Colleen used the right term to say it's not insurmountable. There's a crossing agreement that's required, and then there is a license fee, I believe, for that crossing, and you might have to put up a damage deposit because you're going to be crossing that trail. But it's, as you mentioned, there's crossings all throughout the city of Pembroke, and I think that the city's support for the project would go a long way towards getting the county approval for that crossing.
The private road itself, is that to be built to city standards?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it would be.
And who's maintaining the private road?
Well, there would be an agreement with the city, I believe. No, I'm sorry.
There are private road agreements, and that's the next question.
At this point, we're not there yet with it. But as far as I'm aware, it would be a private road, so it would be maintained on its own.
Right.
Not by the developers.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's typically a private road. There is a private road agreement in place, and typically it is operated and maintained by the property owner.
Okay, because I guess I would expect that there would be a private road agreement. Like, is that something we're working into our expectations?
So that would be part of the, through you, Mr. Chairman, that would be part of the site plan agreement.
Okay.
And that would be dealt with at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the agreement then would be attached, the road agreement would be attached, a private road agreement would be attached to the site plan agreement.
Okay. Okay, so it's all been positive so far. Why isn't this two applications? This is two separate properties. It's two separate concepts. I guess I'm just wondering why this wasn't dealt with two separate applications and two fees, and like, other than them not really neighboring each other because there's a trail through them, but really everything about this has been separate. So I guess administratively, why did we?
Well, I guess through you, Mr. Chairman, we felt that, we're going to have the same notification area as both of them would be contacting the same neighbors. It's less confusing for the neighbors when they have one application versus the two. And because we were writing one report for the two of them, we just felt that the one application was sufficient.
Backing up to all the other positive stuff, though, I am so much in favor of this. I kind of just wish it was bigger, but I certainly accept the parking statements because that's also something that I tend to get into a bother about. And when he mentioned that, that certainly makes sense to me, but I will be happily and wonderfully supporting this one.
Thank you. Yes, Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two comments. Number one, we're looking at roughly 100 units here in the two apartments. And it's in a beautiful area, if you know that area, that Howard Street area. It's going to give access to those tenants to some good shopping. It's a great commercial area. You've got Shoppers Drug Mart, you've got McDonald's close by. Everything is close by to that area. I personally don't see a problem with Algonquin Trail. I know quite a few people who live Mountain View, etc. Other than the odd Skidoo group going by, which can be noisy. They like the trail. They walk the trail. The dogs walk the trail, etc. So I don't see it as an issue, the trail. But I do like the fact that there's going to be 100 residential units in a good area of Pembroke Street East can use that. It's also, excuse me, also those apartment buildings. I'm pretty sure if I know Howard Street, that area, you'll be able to see the river. That's a nice spot. Mm-hmm. And once those houses go up, I don't know what impact it'll have on the apartment dwellers, but they should still be able to see some of the river. I can compare it a bit maybe to Carnarvon Park, the west end of Pembroke, where we have all those units right on the river. Very, very nice residential area. It's beautiful. So as Councillor Keel said, I really have no problem with this, Mr. Chair. I think it's a great proposal.
Yes, Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank you, Councillor Jackno, for bringing up the vegetation point. I would like to ask, so if I understand correctly, Owen, the bylaws have provisions for retaining treed lots. What are those provisions? I'm not familiar with them.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Levesque, no, the The zoning bylaw does not have specific provisions,
No.
and the city's tree bylaw, which I believe is from the late 80s, although I could be wrong, it deals with trees on public property, not private property. So there's no specific provisions by bylaw dealing with trees, but under the official plan, there is a general directive that the city, with the aims of climate change mitigation and adaptation, maximizes vegetation cover, including but not limited to tree cover. So that's the visionary direction of the official plan. The zoning bylaw does not have any specific provisions regarding tree cover, and nor do we have a tree bylaw for private properties.
Is there any mechanism by which we can ensure that we go beyond nice words tonight and say that as many mature trees are preserved as possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be something that would have to, like, if you wanted other municipalities, usually larger ones, have tree bylaws. So that would be something that would have to be brought to council, and council would have to approve that. And I'll let Ms. Soriel speak.
We can ensure it through the site plan agreement. Again, it won't be anything in the bylaw itself, but we will endeavor through the site plan agreement to ensure that as many trees as possible are kept.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I also had questions with regards to, and that's more directed towards the developer, and the site itself is, especially the part that is closest to the river with regards to flooding. I was trying to see on my phone, but it wasn't very successful. Like, what's the elevation difference between the river level and the watermark? Yeah, and the property. And like, if we go back to 2019 and the big flood we had, that, like, would the property be impacted?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So part of the topographic survey work that the developer had done was picking up the 1 in 100-year floodplain elevation that's in the bylaw, and that is part of the official plan amendment, and the zoning bylaw amendment is to redraw that line on the mapping to follow that 1 in 100-year line. Sorry.
And if I could
Yes.
add, Mr. Chairman, that there be no openings. So
Right.
no windows, no nothing can be located below 114.2 meters. The water never went that high.
Okay.
So that's also a requirement. And also, as part of your package, there was an elevation survey done, and it actually shows it can go a little closer. But it will meet the requirements of the 1 to 100 year floodplain. But any openings has to be higher. So there would be fill some in there, and then there would be no openings below the 114.2 meters.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Romeo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of little points. First of all, it's an excellent project. I have no problem with the situation of 101 Howard Street. I think all of the important points have been made and the accolades passed on. I guess I'm looking at the 1 Howard Street section, and to me, as I was wondering about the flood fringe level, I was just wondering, I mean, I read things that they were trying to loosen that up somehow in the province. Has there been any movement? Is it still a 1 to 100, or are they changing that? Or there's an attempt to change it to make it easier for a construction?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no, there's been no changes made. We're considered like the Alumet Lake portion. And so the Ministry of Natural Resources in the 80s gave us these figures. So anything below 112.9 meters is hazard, floodplain, so you can't build. Anything between 113.9 and 112.9, you can build to the underlying zoning, but it has to be filled to be 113.9. And then no openings They have to be no less than 114.2. So those requirements are still in place and still work.
Great. So I guess my follow-up question is with the section on one along the river, from the high water mark, how far back how far back from the river edge are they able to start building? Obviously, the railroad, I mean, was high enough at the time. There was no problems there.
There is a section in the zoning bylaw that says that between the water's edge and the building has to be a minimum of, I don't know, I'm going to say 50 meters or there's some amount.
Setback,
There
yeah.
is a setback there in the zoning bylaw. 15. Okay, 15. Sorry.
15 meters. yeah.
15 meters. So there has to
15
be a minimum of 15
So
meters
there's
setback.
lots of there'll be lots of room for development along the river as well.
Well, they're proposing 4 single family
Yeah.
homes. Yeah.
But aren't the ones that they're proposing though is on the south side of the trail, isn't it?
North side
Oh.
of the trail. North side of the trail,
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
right?
Yes.
They're on the north side of the
Okay,
trail.
okay. Now
Yeah.
now I've got to put things together. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
there's the trail.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Okay,
I
so
hadn't
they'd be
seen
on the
that.
north side. So there's the water
Yeah.
there, and then there's the
Okay.
apartment buildings.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay. That puts everything in view.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. And
Yes.
I'm comfortable with the site plan agreements and the controls that'll be in there. And as far as trees are concerned, you know, what do we define as a tree that should be kept? I heard the word, mature trees and so on. I've been away for a month, and today I happened to be driving to the West End, and I drove by Stewart Street, where the old steel equipment was. When I left, there were trees there. I come back, what you said has been stripped.
Mhm.
Now, having grown up a block from that area, I'm sure that I don't know how many of those trees in there would have been mature and would have been the kind you want to keep. But I'm just wondering when it comes to the definition of the kind of trees that you want. There's a lot of poplars, and I don't know if that's the kind of tree, but I'm sure that the city will have that in control. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Ed.
I just don't
Yep.
want to get carried away.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get carried away with all the tree huggers.
No, I agree with you, but I just want to make sure that we protect our climate for the people coming behind us. That's my concern. As you said, Councillor Levister, when you went away, there were trees there, but that was a factory lot at one time. You know, it was the old steel equipment, and there were no trees there. And nature took over on its own, but they were scrub trees. I can agree with you. They were probably aspen and poplar and swamp willow, things that'll grow in a crack in the hole in the ground. They weren't, white pine or oak or anything of that nature. But anyway, my question is private road. When I hear the word private road for this particular development means that it's a private road. It does not belong to the municipality. Would that be correct?
Colleen?
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
that's correct, Councilor.
Okay, so now that means that the developer, whoever will be in that area, will be responsible for maintaining the road, plowing, salting, sanding. Yet we will be producing and supplying them with water and sewer, and they've paved the top of the road. Now we have a break in the sewer pipe on a private road. Are we responsible to go and fix that, obviously? And are we responsible for repairing the surface of the road that we've dug up? Who takes responsibility? We're supplying them with water and sewer. Tentatively, I can see that road being paved. So what happens? That's my hypothetical question.
Thank you. And excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think we're still maybe a little bit, well, to answer the first part of that is yes. The road would be maintained, operated, salted, cleared of snow by the property owner. as we talked about, that's what the private road agreement would stipulate. I think it's a point well taken about where the sewer and water lines would go. And we're a little bit early. We've shown a conceptual private road to those lots. But I think what we would do through the consent process and through the site plan process is we would work with the city's ops department and we would come up with a mutually agreeable plan that might be able to help mitigate that maybe there is an ability to have those the water and sewer line at the edge, maybe in a shoulder if the road happens to be paved, that sort of thing. So it maybe doesn't have to be right in the middle of a paved driveway. So I think we can address that through as we get further into the detailed design.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
supplemental. We do have areas such as Burns Drive, Cedar Lane, where people were complaining there wasn't enough pressure for water to a fire hydrant. I believe those are also private roads, are they not? Or are they maintained by the municipality? Is it Burns Drive or Cedar Lane in behind the Canadian Tire gas bar in that
So
area?
It's Cedar Lane. Burns Drive is in the township.
Okay, Cedar
So Cedar
Lane,
Lane, but the city does go down there and maintain. that
that's a
portion.
private road?
But it is a privately owned, yes. It's not owned by the city, but we do have an agreement. It's been done like that for years.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Ah,
Having, Mr. Chair, having heard the questions, I'm John Wren. I'm the property owner next to these property being developed. The lots on the river side of the property or that's being developed are below the water and sewer line. So for myself and my neighbor, we have to pump our sewage up to that line. How will that be addressed if these lots are sold? Will they be sold, I presume, to individual owners? And now the property is going through, it would be going through another property owner's property and it has to be developed to do that. Is the water and sewer issue been considered for those lower elevation lots in this proposal, or is that something that would come up in future?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. That would be the intent would be that we would have to do the same thing with these lots, would be you have a pump that would pump up to the services. So it's still a little early days, but that would be the intent there.
Each of those lots that have to be considered then.
Exactly. Yep. And it's again too early to know if our clients are going to develop the properties themselves and then sell the houses, or if they'd sell the lots up. But yes, that's certainly the way. Yes.
any further comments or questions? Could we have a motion, please? Ian?
Move that we accept the recommendation in the staff report.
Seconder? Marcel? Any further comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. B, Z2 2025 Block 614 and 615 Golf View subdivision. Zoning bylaw and planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Right, yeah, would you?
The applicants for this application is again, Catherine Curry of JP2G Consultants, Inc. On behalf of different property owners. They've submitted an application to reconfigure the existing site-specific zoning of blocks 614 and 615 of Gulf View subdivision. At this time, a more detailed development proposal has been prepared and come forward for this portion of the subdivision. And this includes 4 15-story apartment buildings and a 6-story retirement residence.
Mhm.
So these properties are currently zoned residential type 4 special exception 21 by the zoning bylaw. This zoning permits the use of apartment dwelling along with specified main floor permitted uses that include home-based business, day nursery, and commercial uses that are selectively limited. The zoning the existing zoning allows for a maximum building height of 15 stories, but specifically for an apartment dwelling. So the proposed zoning is a residential type 4, a special exception 15, and this is required to add the permitted use of retirement home dwelling to the existing permitted uses and to allow for this use, the retirement home dwelling, to also have a maximum building height of 15 stories. Further site-specific relief with this application is requested to allow for a minimum lot area of 1.5 acres for block 614 and 5.8, I'm sorry, hectares, not acres, and for 5.8 hectares for block 615, and for privacy yard requirements to be reduced from 7.62 meters to 5 meters. So the proposed addition of the permitted use of retirement home dwelling is highly compatible with the existing permitted use of apartment dwelling. Both of these are permitted under any standard R4 zoning. While the proposed retirement home dwelling, it's only intended to be 6 stories at this time, but allowing a maximum building height of 15 stories for this use will give the developer flexibility in the future when designing and building. And it will also keep the maximum building height requirement in the zone consistent, as both permitted uses will have the exact same height restrictions. So that's why it's being proposed and recommended. In her planning justification report regarding the proposed reduced minimum lot area, Ms. Curry states that the formula used in the zoning bylaw to calculate the minimum lot area for an apartment building does not contemplate the form of high-rise development that is proposed in this application. The site plan demonstrates ample room to accommodate landscaping and open space and an appropriate amount of parking for vehicles and bicycles. The amount of land required by the zoning bylaw using the formula currently in place would require a significant amount of land for apartment buildings of this size, which would be contrary to contemporary good planning principles of compact development and minimizing land consumption. Regarding the proposed reduced privacy yard requirement, this can be viewed as minor relief at a reduction of 2.62 meters. And again, it will allow the developer more flexibility in the site planning process while still ensuring sufficient privacy for first floor residential units. Regarding parking, the zoning bylaw requires a total of 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit for apartment dwellings and a total of 0.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit for retirement home dwellings. The developer intends to fully accommodate the required parking with both parking structures and surface parking. As such, the proposed zoning can again be viewed as highly in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Regarding the official plan, blocks 614 and 615 are both designated residential by Schedule A, and the definition of this designation is that this classification of land means the predominant use of land in the areas so designated shall be for all types of residential dwellings. In addition, other uses that support the proper functioning of a residential area, such as senior citizens housing, local commercial uses, home-based businesses, shall also be permitted, provided that the location and site design of each is compatible with the residential amenities of the area. So the proposed zoning, which carries over the permitted commercial uses of the existing site-specific zoning, exactly meets this definition of the residential designation by the official plan. Further, the official plan states that the city of Pembroke will encourage all forms of residential intensification that creates a potential supply of new housing units, and that this shall be encouraged in built-up areas of the city where there is sufficient existing or planned infrastructure to accommodate. And the proposed zoning is strongly in keeping with this direction in the official plan, as it will allow for residential intensification within an existing plan of subdivision that has sufficient planned infrastructure. Regarding municipal servicing, the official plan states that all residential development shall be adequately serviced with municipal water and sewer services. Quite similarly, the provincial policy statement has these same aims. In the case of this application, full water and sanitary sewer servicing is planned for both blocks under the Gulfview Land Development Inc. Plan of Subdivision. A servicing impact study has been prepared by JP2G Consultants Inc. that states that the increased number of units proposed within blocks 614 and 615 will not negatively impact the existing sanitary sewers and pumping station installed to date within the development, nor the downstream collection system. This is possible due to the fact that these additional residential units offset the allowance for potential growth that was included in the sizing of the pumping station and sewers. Further, the requirement of both site plan approval and a building permit for the proposed development and buildings will trigger the approval of the operations department, ensuring adequate servicing capacity. The official plan explicitly requires site plan control for this residential development. Regarding the provincial planning statement, it states that planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities by permitting and facilitating all types of residential intensification. And this application proposes residential intensification, again, within an existing plan of subdivision to introduce new housing options, and it results in a large net increase in residential units. As such, is highly in keeping with the provincial planning statement. All of that said, the planning department is recommending the approval of this zoning bylaw amendment application for blocks 614 and 615 of Gulfview subdivision.
Sorry, Owen, have we received any submissions regarding this application?
We have received a single informational inquiry.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anyone representing the application would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything in particular to add. I think Owen, as usual, has done a very nice job summarizing the application, but I'd be pleased to answer any questions that members of committee would have.
Ian?
When do we plan to see these buildings built? Or any buildings in Gulfview for that matter?
So all I can say to that is that in my conversations with the owner of the property, he intends to start construction in the spring. And that's not necessarily these buildings because it'll take some work to put these buildings together and the plans for these buildings. But I'm told that he plans to start construction in the spring.
How many times have we been told construction's about to start?
I can't speak to that.
How many times have you been told construction's about to start?
Me personally, that's the first time. I've only been with JP2G a couple of years, so.
So, I mean, obviously this is a development that's been going on. Well, I think Councillor Jacquinot was Mayor Jacquinot at the time. Nothing's happened. I'm tired of people telling me about a pumping plant. I don't care. A pumping plant's not a house. Nobody's living. Well, somebody could be living in the pumping plant for all I know. I don't know. This just seems so pie in the sky, considering that you can't even get a single normal size structure built, and now we're talking about a 15-story apartment building. I don't know, like, I guess planning principles, I'm supposed to say that we support this, but as far as an idea, as far as a concept, as far as this guy doing anything, I don't see anything happening. So, I mean, I'm not happy about this. Personally, right now, I'm sitting here wondering if we're wasting our time getting a 10-minute report on something that isn't going to end up happening. Like, I have no goodwill with this developer whatsoever. He's done nothing for over a decade. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not inclined to support going down a rabbit hole when you as the developer aren't even sure if this thing's going to get started or what's going to get started in the spring. Like, this is just, I don't know. I don't know why we're doing this right now.
Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, Councillor Akil is quite correct. This goes back a number of years. But the developer, the president of the company, has invested millions of dollars into the project. The pumping station has been installed. It goes probably 30, 40 feet, 50 feet maybe into the ground. It's solid construction. It's meant to anticipate the number of buildings that'll be put up. And this has been done through your engineering firm, I'm sure. I can't speak for you as the engineering component, but I do know local contractors have been hired. There's ongoing conversation right now with the Ontario ORPC about providing services, et cetera. So I have to admit, I have heard that, yeah, we're going to build in the spring. Hopefully this will be the spring of not our miscontent, but our whatever that Shakespearean line is. This will be, hopefully it'll go forward, because the individual has poured a lot of his own money into that particular project. And I can't see a person investing that amount of money and then just walking away from it. I know we all would like to consider it being built immediately, but as most developers, we've had developments within the city that have been here for a long period of time as well, that have not been developed. There are potential for development. So in reference to those questions, I can understand your concern. I too want to see it move forward. And I believe that Mr. Eftimovsky has arranged for a meeting with the mayor at the end of this month to discuss the project and maybe make some sort of an announcement. So I'm a little premature on that, but I'll leave the mayor share that with you. Thank you.
Yes, Romeo. And then
I first heard about this Gulfview subdivision lands when I opened up the newspaper and it was a great big ad. I said, where is this? I thought maybe it was beside Island Bray, but I said, no, that's Quebec. And then I thought Pembroke Golf Course, finally, I said, they're doing something with the land on the Pembroke Golf Course. So then I started inquiring and I find out it was in this field way out there off the highway. So that's been a long time. And I'm like you, I thank Councillor Keel for expressing my frustrations with this particular plan. And the first thing I thought about 15 stories. I remember they were arguing with the fire department when they were looking at 4 and 5 stories. So I'm wondering how they're going to feel about having to deal with a 15-story building. And boy, I think the city council is going to be ready for putting out some money to the fire department to get the appropriate equipment for the safety of these things. But there is a light of optimism. I think maybe this is time. I mean, we've had COVID, we've had a lot of things that have happened in this country that has damped development. But I see a little light of optimism here, and I hope you and I are around to see that 15-story building. Isn't that something? Coming into Pembroke, Paul Martin Drive, to see these 2 twin towers, it'd be nice. So I hope that I'm not pushing up daisies, like I said before it becomes a fruition.
I want to see one house.
Beforehand, a response to that, if you wish.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make mention of well, first of all I can do is convey your thoughts and your comments to the property owner. I will certainly do that after this meeting. But I did just want to make note that, as Owen mentioned, the 15 stories is already permitted in the zoning bylaw for those buildings. It's just extending the 15-story permission to the retirement dwelling. So that permission already exists. This isn't a new request for 15 stories. I just wanted to make that clarification.
Marcel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to JP2G. Am I right in saying that this land that's being rezoned is not the original owner or not the original developer of Gulfview? Chris, I think you know what I mean. I was led to believe that this parcel was sold and that this is a new developer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it is still Mr. Eftimovsky. Yep, it's the original owner. And these the subdivision hasn't been finalized yet, so those blocks can't be sold yet.
Further comments or questions? Can I have a motion? Moved by Marcel, seconded by Ed. That
we accept the proposal as presented, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, past decision. Thank you. Thank you, by the way, very much. Past decision updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at our last Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee meeting of November 25th, 2024, 2 applications were heard, one for zoning bylaw amendment for 362 Miller Street and another for zoning bylaw and official plan amendments for 1127 Pembroke Street West. Following the committee meeting, with your recommendation for approval, both of these moved to a public meeting of council on December 3rd. They were subsequently passed as bylaws on December 17th, 2024. And as of January 8th, 2025, the bylaws are in full force and effect as they passed their applicable 20-day appeal periods. So both of these applications are now successfully final. And just to add a note to 362 Miller Street, I was able to be present at the opening of First Step Options since their zoning has been approved. And it was a very satisfying thing to witness, that them being able to move into their new location that seems to be custom designed for their needs. So they were very, very happy with everything.
Thank you. The next meeting is proposed for February the 24th, 2025. Is this okay with everyone? Okay. Now I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Before.
Oh, yes, I'm
Mr.
sorry, Bob.
Chairman, I was catching up on some of the reading because I was away for a while in the Egerton Leader, and I saw this article, potential for 2,500 new housing units in Pembroke. So I read about it because obviously Colleen had made a presentation to City Council, and I started looking at all these things. There's a lot of them. I mean, Councillor Keel expressed some frustration. I mean, there's a lot of those 2,500 that have been on the books a long time. But I did note, and I said a little light of optimism, you did note there were a couple that seems to be some movement on at this particular time because it's changed owners or so hopefully, it'd be nice if we could have the sign inside the Pembroke thing, 18,000 residents. But that was a good report, by the way, I mean, based on what I read. And so hopefully that a lot of that will get moving. Is there anything you'd like to add that you mentioned to council that we, as the might be aware of or should know?
So I presented a report to committee, and the report had and I can pass that on, the report, we can email it to you. So it had a chart with all the potential developments that could happen in the city, and it had whether they were draft approved or just in a potential development stage or whatever. And so it all added up to about 2,500 homes. But the frustrating part is a lot of them, there's a few of them anyway that have received draft plan approval, but we've had one of them tonight just doesn't seem to be moving forward. And so that's the issue. And I sat on the Ontario Professional Planning Institute board, and a lot of municipal planners are experiencing the same frustration. It's not just the city of Pembroke. The province has stepped in a little bit and has said that anything prior to, I'm going to say April of 1995, that has received draft approval, if they don't do anything within 3 years, their draft approval is gone. We only have one, and that's on Dieuville Drive, the extension of Dieuville Drive in behind Fellows High School. So they have 3 years from, I can't remember if it was last June or whatever, to be able to get developing, or they lose their draft plan approval. But all the other ones are just past that date. And so we don't have any say at this point. Maybe the new provincial government will step in and add more dates, but they are listening to municipalities saying that something has to be done. And so then that puts the onus on the developer. If they don't want to lose their draft plan approval, then they may start or sell it and somebody else will take over. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Moved by Ian. We adjourn. Thank you.